Hare Krishna Prabhu, Dandat Pranam, all glories to Srila Prabhupada. You're on mute, Prabhuji.
Yeah, okay. Hare Krishna, Dandavat Pranam. Hari Bol, good to see you again.
It's same here, Prabhuji. So nice to see you and get your association. And again, it is a benefit of side benefit of this lockdown that through Zoom we are able to connect, Prabhuji.
Yeah, that's the big silver lining, huh?
Yes, Prabhuji.
Before we proceed, you folks are in a suburb of Delhi called Gurgaon, is that it?
Yes,
how do you
Prabhuji.
how do you spell that, Gurgaon?
G-U-R. Now it is Gurugram. They have changed the name. So it is G-U-R-G-R-A-M.
Okay, G-U-R-G-R-A-M.
No, G-U-R-U-G-R-A-M.
Oh, Gurugram.
Yes, because it's
So,
a place for Guru Dronacharya. He had an ashram here.
For what?
Guru Dronacharya, he had an ashram here, it is said.
Oh.
So from there, the word Guru comes.
Uh-huh. And Gurgaon, that was a British name?
I don't know who gave, but it's a name which many cities in India, like over the period of time, they get
right.
You know,
like Bangalore and Bengaluru and
yes. Yes.
Okay. So Gurugram. All right. Because the devotees are always asking me, well, where are they in Delhi? Because Delhi is a big place. I said, I'm not sure. Okay, now that I've got that straightened out, looks like you got some people on the Jai. Hare Krishna Prabhu's Vancha Kalpatarubhyascha Kripa Sindhu Vevacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha. All right, so
Prabhuji, we wait for a minute or two. It's still 1 minute to 8 here in India time.
All right, so they're still coming.
Yes, Prabhuji, they're still coming. Just wait. So because some devotees are new also, we've also invited some devotees, senior devotees, and other preachers from our area. So they also joined. So I will give a brief introduction, Prabhuji, and then we can start. In the 1 or 2 minutes, we'll start, Prabhuji. We'll start it.
Okay, now tell me, I see one picture. It looks like somebody's in a uniform. The name is Supragya Sharma.
Yeah, Prabhuji, that's my son. I'm Medha, that's my son. So I'm using his Zoom ID.
Okay, this is his school uniform?
Yes, it's a school uniform. So I'm using his Zoom ID, school Zoom ID. That's why his profile picture is there.
Okay. Now you see next to my picture, there's a word that says owner, right?
Yes.
You see that? So maybe because the Indian folks are very good at technical stuff, I'm trying to get rid of that.
Yes, Prabhuji. I will change it. 1 second. I will change it, Prabhuji.
You can change it?
Yes, I can change it.
Oh, wow. Because I was going to have a call with an American sannyasi today who's tech savvy, and he was going to help me figure it out. But you can already do it. Now you know how to. Okay, so
is the spelling right?
Just put an A on the end of Suresvara.
Okay, Prabhuji.
Because that's the full Sanskrit. Yeah, there you go. Wow. So whenever I log in anywhere, it's going to show that?
No, Prabhuji, because I have changed it.
Oh, you changed it.
So you can change it, Prabhuji. If you go on your name.
Right. I see. We've tried this. We try with profile and edit. And...
No. You just go on the name, Prabhuji. Just put the cursor on your name. Then you see there's a mute and more. In the more, if you go down, there is a rename.
So I got my cursor on mute.
Yes.
So should I click on mute?
Yes, Prabhuji. Not on the mute, Prabhuji. Sorry. The more.
Oh, this one?
Yeah, the more one. Next to the mute is more.
And then rename.
Yes.
Wow. So I can do that every time. But
yes, Prabhuji.
But to have it show all the time with even me not doing this, there's probably a way through Zoom too, huh? In settings.
Yes, Prabhuji. Yes, Prabhuji.
Yeah, I've tried that, but anyway, well, he'll help me do it, I think, today.
Yes, Prabhuji. So
Okay.
it is 8 o'clock, Prabhuji, so we can start.
Okay.
So Hare Krishna and Pranam, dear devotees. So welcome to this very special seminar by His Grace Suresvara Prabhu on founder Acharya, Prabhupada being the founder Acharya. And what is the meaning of founder Acharya? Because we hear this term every now and then, we read it everywhere. But what is the meaning? So that we will hear from Prabhuji in this series of 10 seminars. So every month we propose to have one seminar on a Friday evening. So it's going to be 10 seminars taking 10 months. So one request to everybody that it will be nice if those who can, please switch on your videos so Prabhuji can see you and you can also take Prabhuji's darshan. And so now I'll give a brief introduction of Prabhuji. Prabhuji joined ISKCON more than 5 decades back, more than 50 years back in 1970. He received his first initiation in 1971 and second initiation in 1972. And over the period of Prabhuji's service has centered mainly around Prabhupada books, studying them, distributing them as brahmachari, then helping to produce them. Prabhuji worked with BBT, and then writing articles based upon them. And now he has been teaching from them. And in 2011, while teaching at Mayapur, MIHE, his concern over lack of connection, many devotees were feeling for our founder Acharya. It reached a tipping point. And so that year, he began researching, and presenting his series of seminars, Srila Prabhupada, our founder Acharya. I believe it was one of his godbrother, I don't know, maybe Ravindra Prabhu, or I know who it was, who had that incident where he asked on Prabhupada appearance day, I think, where everybody was supposed to keep fast. And where Brahmachari said, he's not my guru, as he was eating a pizza, I believe. So, that resulted in an inspiration Prabhuji felt, and with encouragement from MIHE and GBC committee, then on Srila Prabhupada position, Prabhuji began presenting this series of seminars around the world in ISKCON since 2012. And we are very fortunate that Prabhuji has agreed to our request to give this seminar once a month, the whole 10 series seminar. And we heartily welcome Prabhuji by loudly chanting Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. Suresvara Prabhu ki jai, Jagat Guru Srila Prabhupada ki jai.
Yay. Yes. Thank you, Prabhu. I'm going to go to my scripts and just confirm that you can still see me. You can still see me?
Yes, Prabhu.
Okay, so I'm looking at my script. See, for those who don't know, those seminars that I was teaching in person, live, pre-COVID, 2012 to 2020, basically, they were pretty long. They were like 2 hours, 2.5 hours each, sometimes 3 hours. So during COVID, I've developed this Founder Acharya Essentials version of it, which just boils everything down into succinct points. I mean, I do tell some stories, but I just have to keep right to the point to get through the lesson and still have time for question and answer. So we're going to go for, well, let's see, for that introduction, I'll go for maybe 35 minutes from now, and then we'll open it up for discussion. So for the whole journey, I divided into the classic Vedanta scheme, Sambandha Abhideya Prayojana. First 3 lessons are Sambandha lessons, where we deepen our relationship with Srila Prabhupada. And the middle 4 Abhideya lessons, we deepen our commitment to his mission. And the last 3 lessons, 8, 9, and 10, we deepen our love for Srila Prabhupada. Of course, there's overlap always along the way between all 3. But lesson 1, I call it the spiritual masters. And it's based on Prabhupada's, if you like, his kind of brief guided tour of Guru Tattva, as he presents it in his purports to the Sri Chaitanya Chaitamrita. Chapter 1 of the whole CC is called by Kaviraj Goswami, the spiritual masters. So that's what this lesson is based on. The year is 1972. In New Vrindavan, USA, it is Srila Prabhupada's Vyasa Puja Day. As the sun climbs to the meridian, the thick mist shrouding the West Virginia foothills gives way to a spotless blue. Inside a hilltop pavilion, hundreds of devotees and guests, politicians, journalists, and academics among them, have gathered to observe the 76th anniversary of Prabhupada's birth. It is to the guests especially that Prabhupada directs his address. So you may wonder right off, why are all these VIPs, why have they journeyed to New Vrindavan, which is pretty remote in the West Virginia foothills? Because that spring of 72, some of ISKCON's leaders approached Prabhupada and said, you know, Srila Prabhupada, we've been chanting on the street corners of America for 6 years now, but people, they don't really understand us. We look different, we sound different, we're practicing a culture that is appears to be foreign to them. So how do we really help them understand what we're all about? So Prabhupada, it was Prabhupada's idea. So you invite them to New Vrindavan in around August, September, and we'll have what Prabhupada called Bhagavad Dharma discourse. And he'd already been doing this in India, Bhagavad Dharma discourse in big cities in 71, 72. So he just continued it. He said, we'll have the big festival, Janmashtami Vyasa Puja, but before and after those days, we'll have many days of discourses. So it was quite an event. It was about a 2-week long event. And on Vyasa Puja Day, then Prabhupada is giving his address. And of course, Janmashtami Vyasa Puja, they're internal festivals. But all these guests were there. So when Prabhupada spoke, when he gave his Vyasa Puja address, he was really addressing the guests. And here's what he said. I was right there too, so I remember. And his address is on the database, and it's also, if you go to YouTube and click in, or you type in 1972 New Vrindavan Vyasa Puja address, you can read it, or you can even see it. There's a film of it. Quote, ladies and gentlemen, this ceremony, of course, those who are my students, they know what is this ceremony. Those who are visitors, for their information, I may inform you something about this ceremony. Otherwise, it may be misunderstood. An outsider may see it that why a person is being worshipped like God, there may be some doubt. Prabhupada's, he's sitting on this big makeshift Vyasasana, this big crimson throne, at the top of this hill and under a pavilion the devotees have erected for the festival. So he's being worshipped in grand style. So Prabhupada is, why a person is being worshipped like God, there may be some doubt. Unquote. Doubt indeed The 1960s and 70s have seen a spike in the number of opportunistic gurus coming to the West, streamlining Vedic revelation to suit modern tastes and reaping the profits. To establish trust, Prabhupada begins to demystify, quote, the guru by connecting him to other gurus in, quote, parampara, a disciplic succession of authentic spiritual masters descending from Lord Krishna himself, the Supreme Personality of Godhead. The demystification continues, quote, on the top of the mango tree, there is a very ripened fruit, and that fruit has to be tasted. So if I drop the fruit from up, it will be lost. Therefore, it is handed over after one, then it comes down. So all Vedic process of knowledge is taken from the authority, and it comes down through disciplic succession, unquote. Well aware of modern antipathy to authority, Prabhupada then compares the guru to that venerable American pedestrian, the mailman, quote. Of course, Prabhupada didn't say mailman, he said post peon. Quote, just like a post peon comes and delivers you, say, $100. So he is not delivering that $100. Your friend has sent you $100, and his business is to hand over that $100 as it is, without any change, without taking $1 from it. No, or adding, no addition, no subtraction. His honesty, his perfection is that he delivers you that $100 which is sent by your friend. He may be imperfect in so many other ways, but when he does his business perfectly, he is perfect. Similarly, we receive perfect knowledge from Krishna through the agency of spiritual master. The next section I call Guru is one, Gurus are different. The Guru as God's mailman, down to earth, yet out of this world. In this sense, all genuine Gurus are one. Those guests who go on to read Prabhupada's teachings will learn how all genuine Gurus also differ. In the very first text of the Sri Chaitanya Chaitamrita, the definitive biography of Lord Krishna's golden avatar, Lord Chaitanya, Srila Krishnadas Kaviraj Goswami begins by offering his respectful obeisances to Gurun, his many spiritual masters. You may recall that first text of CC. Bande Gurun, Isha Bhaktam. His many spiritual masters. In the book's introduction, Srila Prabhupada notes, quote, he uses the plural here to indicate the disciplic succession. He offers obeisances not to his spiritual master alone, but to the whole parampara, the chain of disciplic succession beginning with Lord Krishna himself, unquote. Later in the first chapter, text 35, Kaviraj Goswami offers his respects to, quote, my initiating spiritual master and all my instructing spiritual masters, unquote. Prabhupada comments, quote, a devotee must have only one initiating spiritual master, because in the scriptures, acceptance of more than one is always forbidden. There is no limit, however, to the number of instructing spiritual masters one may accept. Generally, a spiritual master who constantly instructs a disciple in spiritual science becomes his initiating spiritual master later on, unquote. The last sentence indicates the natural normative guru-disciple relationship sustainable over time. Although Prabhupada was uniquely empowered to spread Krishna consciousness worldwide within a few years, it is worth noting that he entrusted the thousands of disciples he was initiating to the care of his local leaders and senior devotees. Now, decades on, to glimpse how his movement's guru-disciple culture can become more local and sustainable, the way he himself describes it, let's continue to examine Prabhupada's presentation of Sri Chaitanya Charitamrita's foundational first chapter, The Spiritual Masters. And then the next section I call Initiating and Instructing Gurus. Excuse me, I have to take a sip of my tea here. You call this a flask, we call it a thermos. Same thing. In the years since Prabhupada's passing, the spotlight on the initiating spiritual master may have led members of his movement to believe that to initiate disciples requires more qualification than to instruct them. In his comments to text 34, Prabhupada disagrees. Quote, the initiating and instructing spiritual masters are equal and identical manifestations of Krishna, although they have different dealings, unquote. In his comments to text 47, Prabhupada raises the point to a warning. Quote, there is no difference between the shelter-giving Supreme Lord and the initiating and instructing spiritual masters. If one foolishly discriminates between them, he commits an offense in the discharge of devotional service, unquote. Of course, the potential to have many instructing gurus does not obviate or render unnecessary the requirement to accept initiation from a singular guru. In the Nectar of Devotion, chapter 6, quote, how to discharge devotional service, Prabhupada identifies the first two principles of devotional service as, quote, number one, accepting the shelter of the lotus feet of a bona fide spiritual master, and two, becoming initiated by the spiritual master and learning how to discharge devotional service from him. We need both rites of passage on our journey home to Krishna. When a devotee once asked Prabhupada which was more important, studying the scriptures or serving a person whose life exemplifies the scriptures, without hesitation, Prabhupada indicated the latter, quote, because the guru can pull your ear. We need to be corrected. In Prabhupada's movement today, initiating gurus may act like parents and instructing gurus like well-wishing relatives. Their relative influence, however, depends on how those relationships develop over time. Our parents are always our parents, yet sometimes we become closer with our relatives, especially if our parents are distant. Nonetheless, if all are well-wishers, serving cooperatively within the founder Acharya's mission, harmony and spiritual progress prevail. And the next section I call the power of commitment. Heavy with spiritual knowledge, all genuine gurus are teachers. At the same time, their impact on our lives varies according to the depth of their commitment to us. Continuing his commentary to text 34, Prabhupada writes, quote, Gurun is plural in number because anyone who gives spiritual instructions based on the revealed scriptures is accepted as a spiritual master. Although others give help in showing the way to beginners, the guru who first initiates one with a Maha Mantra is to be known as the initiator, and the saints who give instructions for progressive advancement in Krishna consciousness are called instructing spiritual masters. Now notice the progressive commitment Prabhupada outlined there, from introducing, which technically in Sanskrit we know as Vardha Pradarshika or Pata Pradarshika, to initiating, that's Diksha, Diksha Guru, to instructing, Shiksha Guru. Whoever instructs us the most is naturally more influential in our lives. And then I repeat a line that Prabhupada had from his own purport earlier. Quote, generally a spiritual master who constantly instructs a disciple in spiritual science becomes his initiating spiritual master later on, unquote. Even if the guru doesn't say a word, the guru is always teaching, especially by example, the most powerful teacher. Quote, example is better than precept, unquote. And quote, actions speak louder than words. I don't know if I told you this anecdote last time, but my late legendary Kirtaniya godbrother Vishnu Jan Swami, he was in Mayapur, and he had this idea that he wanted to go down the Ganga in one of these little boats, or not the boats where the people take you across, but some boat that would be big enough to hold a kirtan party and maybe some supplies. And his idea was that they go down the Ganga and they chant Hare Krishna, and then they dock in these little hamlets, these little villages along the way, and then they enliven the villagers with Harinam and Prasad distribution. But Vishnu Jan had a doubt, and his doubt was that he didn't speak Bengali. He didn't speak Bangla. What will he say to them? So then Prabhupada just laughed. And Prabhupada said, oh, they don't care what you say. They just want to see how you behave. So achar is more telling, it's more revealing than prachar. Actions speak louder than words. And the next section I call, it's a quote. This is from Prabhupada. Quote, so you, every one of you, become guru. That's the quote. For the devotees listening to Prabhupada's Vyasa Puja address, their appreciation of his unique position is increasing. Seated on a throne-like crimson dais, Prabhupada is a guru of gurus, quote, a master at whose feet all masters sit. Although their commitment to him is as green as their summer surroundings, green meaning unripe, immature, his commitment to them is timeless, and his ongoing request difficult for most of them to imagine. Quote, become guru. I mean, this is 1972, Prabhu's. We're just, we were all fresh from growing up in the 60s, and we're just trying to follow the regulative principles. We're struggling to do that and chant 16 rounds. And Prabhupada's telling us to become gurus. So it's hard even for us to process that. Nevertheless, Prabhupada's request is no other than the request of Lord Chaitanya himself. In the Sri Chaitanya Charitamrita, Madhya Lila, chapter 7, text 128, the Lord tells the Brahmana Kurma, quote, instruct everyone to follow the orders of Lord Sri Krishna. And then Prabhupada adds in brackets to that translation, as they are given in the Bhagavad Gita and Srimad Bhagavatam. Prabhupada, he liked to spell things out even in the translations, and sometimes even in the word for word translations. Lord Chaitanya continues, in this way, become a spiritual master and try to liberate everyone in this land, unquote. The first sentence of Prabhupada's commentary to the text says it all. Quote, this is the sublime mission of the International Society for Krishna Consciousness. I mean, even before people practically understood what they called, devotees called Prabhupada Swamiji, those first, I'm listening to the 1966 recordings of Prabhupada, first on the Bowery and then at 26th Avenue, and people hardly understand what he's talking about, even if they can understand his Bengali accent. And but he's pleading with them, try to understand, because he doesn't know how much longer he has to live. He's already had 2 heart attacks on the Jaladuta. He'll have another one in 67 at 26th Avenue. So he's begging them to understand what he's saying. Why? Because he wants them. He wants us to all become gurus. Because he's the representative of Lord Chaitanya. And that's what Lord Chaitanya wanted. So in his first sentence of the purport to that verse, Prabhupada said, this is the sublime mission of the International Society for Krishna Consciousness. You learn and you teach others. As recorded in the Bhaktivedanta database in hundreds of lectures, morning walks, room conversations, letters, and public and private events, Prabhupada cited the above verse as a reminder of the Lord's request. Become guru. From the beginning through the middle to the end of Prabhupada's global ministry, these reminders to his followers were relentless. Here are 2 examples. This is from 1969. It's in a letter. It's a rather famous letter now. And the backstory to this letter is that 2 books have just come out. A heavily abridged Macmillan Company publication of Prabhupada's Bhagavad Gita as it is. Prabhupada had to chop the manuscript down to 1/3 its size. It must have been very painful for him to do that. And also Teachings of Lord Chaitanya came out. So, but Prabhupada is he's so enthusiastic, he's so excited by these 2 books coming out, along with the Indian Bhagavatams he brought from Delhi, the first canto, that he's saying in a letter in the 3rd of January, 1969, a letter to Hansadutta, he's saying this, quote, I want that all my spiritual sons and daughters will inherit this title of Bhaktivedanta, because he's starting to outline how we're going to have degrees. We're going to have Bhakti Shastri, Bhakti Vedanta, Bhakti Vaibhav, Bhakti Vedanta, Bhakti Sarvabhauma. Prabhupada's vision is just soaring off to the end of the millennium, right? At least the golden age, 10,000 years. So he says, I want that all my spiritual sons and daughters will inherit this title of Bhaktivedanta, so that the family transcendental diploma will continue through the generations. Those possessing the title of Bhaktivedanta will be allowed to initiate disciples. He wants it to be based on, learning and purity. Maybe by 1975. Now he's writing in 69, so he's saying maybe by 1975. And he didn't say he'd be gone then either. But this is Prabhupada's mood. He's just trying to expand it. Maybe by 1975, all of my disciples will be allowed to initiate and increase the numbers of the generations. That is my program. That's January 69. And then later on, here's another example of Prabhupada insisting that we all grow up and act as gurus. Quote, so you, this is in a room conversation in Tehran, Iran, March 75. Quote, and who is he talking to? He's talking to a few householder couples who have pioneered Krishna consciousness in Iran, which is a very closed country, even more so today, because here it was before the Shah of Iran was deposed, before the Ayatollahs came in and really made it closed. But it's still very much sectarian and Muslim. So he's telling three householder couples, husband and wife, quote, so you, every one of you can become guru. Now you may say that I am not interested to become a guru, but Chaitanya Mahaprabhu says that if you are not interested, that is not very good. You should be interested. You must be guru. That is success of your life. Okay, and then one more section. I call it strictly follow. This is the last section before I open it up for questions and comments. So be thinking about that, what you might like to ask about. So, quote, strictly follow. This is another quote from Prabhupada. While he was spreading Krishna consciousness worldwide, Prabhupada anticipated the disorder, if not outright chaos, that would likely befall his movement after his passing. He even referred to it indirectly in one of his Bhaktivedanta purports. Quote, the main business of human society is to think of the Supreme Personality of Godhead at all times, to become his devotees, to worship the Supreme Lord, and to bow down before him. The Acharya, now think with a big capital A, not small a, like founder Acharya. The Acharya, the authorized representative of the Supreme Lord, establishes these principles, but when he disappears, things once again become disordered. And if you know anything about ISKCON history, it certainly became disordered. So what to do? So Prabhupada continues in the purport. He says, the perfect disciples of the Acharya try to relieve the situation by sincerely following the instructions of the spiritual master. Yeah. All right. Prabhupada anticipated that some of his leading disciples, out of immaturity, might try to imitate his unique position as a Jagat Guru, a universal teacher. At the same time, his relentless reminders to become genuine gurus indicate a greater concern. So what's that concern? That in their supreme esteem for their founder Acharya, his followers would not mature to become gurus in their own right and shelter others in Lord Chaitanya's mission. How then would Krishna's mercy reach every town and village, as the Vedic scriptures had foretold? And how would every sincere aspirant receive the personal care and guidance they would need to make the journey home, back to Godhead? In his writings, therefore, Prabhupada made it clear that the most important qualification to become a guru was to, quote, strictly follow the instructions of Guru and Krishna. And here's one evidence of that from a letter to an early devotee in Montreal, Canada. Quote, a person who has liberated Acharya and Guru cannot commit any mistake, unquote. Prabhupada wrote an early disciple, quote, But there are persons who are less qualified or not liberated, but still can act as guru and acharya by strictly following the disciplic succession. Even our founder acharya, out of his humility, he would say things like, I may not be perfect, but because I follow the perfect, therefore I am perfect. So one need not be a superman or a superwoman to be a regular spiritual master, liberated or non-liberated. A guru is genuine if he or she, quote, strictly follows the orders of Guru and Krishna. So by Prabhupada's reckoning, his movement today likely has more local gurus than its own members recognize. They simply need to be formally approached for guidance and formally encouraged to give it. As Prabhupada told his disciples in Hawaii, quote, we require many millions of gurus. How many initiating gurus do we have in ISKCON? Not somewhere around 100. That is not sustainable, Prabhus. We need many millions of gurus, Shiksha and Diksha, but to personally take care of people. And here's how I end it. Pens scribbling, cameras rolling. His American guests listen to Prabhupada close his Vyasa Puja address. As he looks into their eyes, Prabhupada is concerned that they've correctly heard and understood his message. So this is how Prabhupada ended the address. I'll never forget this, sitting at his lotus feet. Quote, so this is the position of a spiritual master. Don't misunderstand that this person is sitting very comfortably and taking all honors and contribution. Prabhupada says, it is needed just to teach them how to respect the representative of God. This is the sum and substance of Vyasa Puja. Thank you very much. Hare Krishna. Prabhus, I would love to hear your questions and comments now.
Hare Krishna. Thank you so very much, Prabhuji. So, Hare Krishna devotees. So, we heard wonderfully about the basics of Guru Tattva and something about Acharya also, and also how Prabhupada envisaged that there'll be not hundreds but thousands,
millions
of gurus. And the Guru doesn't mean just, yes, billions of gurus. And Guru doesn't mean just Diksha Guru, it means Diksha Guru, Shiksha Guru, Patpardasha Guru, whatever we can do, we all do. So now we open to question answer. So those who have questions can raise their hand, or and we can ask questions one by one. Hare Krishna. Yes. Okay. Yes. Hare Krishna. Yes, Rani Prabhu. Go ahead.
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji, Dandat Pranam.
Hi.
Thank you so much, Prabhuji, for today's talk on Prabhupada as our founder Acharya, the first session. Prabhu, you told about that we have Shiksha and Diksha gurus, right? And Prabhupada was also quoting that both are same and equal manifestations of Krishna. But somehow what I have also seen and what we have developed over the past years is that we are not able to equally respect both Shiksha and Diksha Guru on the same level. So how can we inculcate this more practically, that we respect the Shiksha Guru also in the same manner that we give the same awe and reverence to the Diksha Guru as well? Or in fact to other Diksha Gurus even?
Yeah, good question. Yeah, I think the best way for me to answer the question is to give a little historical perspective, because even though this is our culture, it's in Shastra that they're equal and identical manifestations of Krishna. After Prabhupada left, and that chaos that he anticipated in that fourth canto purport, the chaos mainly was an imitation of Prabhupada's position, where, and it was different in different parts of the world. It was more or less an imitation of Prabhupada's position, some more, some less, but it was just out of immaturity because, Prabhupada had told us, and especially his leaders, in that last year, if you hear the recordings of Prabhupada in Vrindavan from May to November, May 17th exactly to November 14th when he disappeared. He was saying just how to carry on, well, just do as I do. So it was almost to the immature ear, it might have been an invitation to just be like the founder, to just imitate in every way what the things that Prabhupada had done as founder Acharya. So over time, that imitation proved to be so, it was almost fatal. It was almost fatal. What we had in what's come to be known as the zonal Acharya days of ISKCON was practically one movement, the Hare Krishna movement, fragmenting into many kingdoms, with the zonal guru sort of being the king of his kingdom. And it was wrong. It was totally wrong. So, and it was only because Prabhupada, out of his compassion and kindness and wisdom, had created a governing body commission in 1970 to train, and then for 7 years, and then he left, and still pretty much neophyte. Even, come on, the oldest devotees in the movement at that time were, they'd been in the movement at the most 11 years, because Prabhupada started ISKCON in 66. So it was almost an historical inevitability that there be that chaos and that there be that immature kind of imitation. I like to think of it as something that we had to go through and to learn the hard way, just so we would never do this again. That said, as you suggest, Prabhu, we're still kind of suffering from the remnants. It's kind of like the hangover from the zonal Acharya era, where we're exalting the Diksha Guru. In some cases, if people are really, clueless about Shastra and Guru and Sadhu, they exalt him above anybody else, and it becomes like a real cult. And that's really bad, because if we want ISKCON to survive the ravages of time, because time tends to, Sakale Neha Mahata Yoga, Krishna said to Arjuna, in due course of time, the succession was broken. If we want ISKCON to survive the ravages of time, we have to make our Guru disciple culture thoroughly founder Acharya centered, so that we see all of us, you folks are in, was it Guru, what was the name? Guru Ashram? Is that the name?
Guru Gram Prabhu.
Guru Gram, I'll get it one day. Guru Gram. I'm sitting here in Tucson, Arizona, just the other side of the earth. We'll see, the more we all make Prabhupada life teachings, mood and mission, full immersion in that, the more we make him our foundational spiritual master, our core identity, then we'll be less likely to see each other as different, belonging to different groups. Okay, we all have different external backgrounds, Indian American, South American, European, whatever, Chinese, but we're all Prabhupada-anugas. And to realize that, we really have to, not just by the lip, but by the deed, make Prabhupada the center of our Guru disciple culture. We all sing every day at Guru Puja. Chakudan dilo je janme Prabhu se. He is my Lord birth after birth. He, specifically, we're singing to him. This is Narottam's singing, to his guru. But Srila Prabhupada is not simply a guru, he's a founder Acharya. He's the absolute center. It should be the absolute center of our ISKCON universe. So it's especially helpful when people in leadership positions, whether they're Shiksha, Diksha, what have you, or in managerial positions, TPs and regional, I know you have your Indian bureau, in India, and you have, what is that? IACC? What is the name of that? IAC? Continental Committee, right? You have some kind of continental committee. Anyway, we all have our different management systems, and we all have our different God families. But Prabhupada is he's the center. He's the sun around whom we all should be orbiting. It's like Giriraj Maharaj wrote that book, Many Moons. Many moons, not many suns, many moons. Because what does a moon do? It orbits the body, right? So when things have been going on like this for decades, still, very often, it doesn't happen overnight that people can realize that. It requires that everybody fully absorb themselves in Prabhupada's everlasting Vani. And it requires vigorous teaching by the influencers, the gurus, and the leaders, that let's do this. Let's realize our common identity. Otherwise, we're always going to be divided on so many issues, right? So many issues in ISKCON. I kind of alluded to one, by talking about, I want all my boys and girls to be spiritual masters. So that's controversial, right? In India, we talk about Vaishnavi Diksha gurus, for example. But it need not be controversial if we know how Prabhupada presented Guru Tattva according to time, country, candidate. Yeah. The way Prabhupada preached in India was completely different. Not completely, but very different from the way he preached in the West. Because totally different culture, totally different karma, totally different mindset, backgrounds. Yeah. So, did I answer the question? Restate the question to see if I answered it.
Yes, Prabhu. The question was that how can we respect Shiksha and Diksha Guru in the same manner? And
Yeah. Well, no Shastra and hear it from people who are living the Shastra. If the people know that, it's one thing to know something, by reading it, but it's another thing to model it, to practice it, to exemplify it. It's like Prabhupada told Vishnujan, they don't care what you say, they just want to see how you behave. So, for example, if you go to East Kailash Temple and you see Gopal Krishna Maharaj bowing down to his godbrothers, then that's modeling it, that's showing it. Yeah, in the zonal Acharya area, you wouldn't have seen that. In fact, it was so egregious, some were saying, no, you have to bow down to me, even to his own godbrothers. Some people were doing that. It was really kind of a mass hallucination. ISKCON was kind of mentally ill in those days. I mean, good things were going on too. I shouldn't say it was all dark, but there was a real something rotten in the state of Denmark, as it says in Hamlet. And it had to be pulled out by the root. And we're still pulling it out. We're still struggling to make Prabhupada, as founder Acharya, our absolute center. Okay, so you have to become Guru Prabhu and model that. Yes, everybody is gurus in some way, of their family, of their neighborhood, of their whatever capacity we have to help people. Okay, good question. Any more? I see some hands.
Yes, Prabhuji. Yes. Mukund Murari Prabhu. Yes, please. You can unmute Prabhuji. And Mukund Murari Prabhu is from Jaipur, Prabhuji. He is logged in from Jaipur.
Jaipur.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna Prabhu.
Dandavat Pranam Prabhuji. Thank you very much for the beautiful quote. And then please correct me if I didn't hear correctly. You said that Prabhupada said that you all become gurus, liberated or not liberated. Am I right? Did you say that?
Yes, Prabhupada was distinguishing both in that letter I cited and in another, I didn't cite it, there's another, right in a purport, a fourth canto purport, where
Right.
Prabhupada's distinguishing between different, there's liberated, like Prabhupada, he's a liberated soul, he's a Mukta Purush, he's Shakti.
Right. So if Guru is not really liberated, how much important one that how much important it is that Guru being liberated so that he can connect us. And two, if it is all right, then we criticize Akshay Patra.
Whoop, he went mute. Can you unmute him there, Giri Ram?
Yes, Prabhuji. He is unmuted.
They initiate on Prabhupada's behalf.
Okay, you better back up because I missed some sentences there. You were muted.
Yeah. Okay. Is it all right? Am I?
You're fine now. You're fine now. Just restate your.
Oh, okay.
question.
So how much important it is that Guru being liberated, one. And two, if Guru can be not liberated also, then because you said Guru should follow the instructions of the spiritual master. Right. If that is so, then how it is different than Akshay Patra people? They initiate on Prabhupada's behalf, and we do not like that.
Okay, Akshay, what was that Sanskrit you threw in there? Akshay.
He's calling for the
Madhu Pandit Akshay Patra.
Ritviks, Prabhuji. He's speaking more.
Yeah, exactly, Ritviks. How it is different?
How it is different? How are non-liberate? How are say for example?
One that how much it is important that Guru being liberated, and two, then how Akshay Patra, the Ritvik people, they are different from us.
How are they different from us?
Yeah, because they are also initiating on Prabhupada's behalf.
Okay, well, that's a tricky phrase. It depends on what you mean by that. Prabhupada wanted us all to grow up to become regular gurus, but not to imitate him.
Yes, that's
So
correct.
a regular guru may be liberated or non-liberated, but what's the measure? What's the measure of an authentic regular guru in ISKCON? The measure is how well that guru enriches, enhances, and deepens their disciples, their relationship with Srila Prabhupada. I gave the example, I don't know if I gave it last time, but if you ask any self-respecting Ramanuji today, for example, oh, Prabhu, who are you? I see you have different tilak, Ramanuji tilak. And so the person might answer, Arien, Ramanuja Dasan, I am your servant, a servant of Ramanuja. Now this is 1,000 years after Ramanuja appeared, 1017 to 1137. And they're still going on. How is that? Because the Ramanujis realize their foundational identity is with Ramanuja, who they call their Udharak, their main deliverer. And then the Upakarak, the gurus who come after Ramanuja, they call them the benefactor gurus. How do they benefit their disciples? Well, they teach their disciples how to understand Ramanuja's books, how to worship his Murti, how to execute his Vishishta Dvaita mission. Does that sound familiar? I mean, every day we're worshiping Prabhupada at Guru Puja. We're reading his Srimad Bhagavatam, and we're executing his ISKCON mission. So we're supposed to be regular gurus. Now, Ritvikism, I call it Ritvikism, says that Prabhupada's the only guru. He's the only guru, and we're just, really nobodies. But I can connect you with Prabhupada. But here's the ironic part. When I was last at Hare Krishna Hill, I took a tour there, and when was the last time? I think 2018 or 2019. So when I went through the whole thing, and I saw it was very nice deity worship and book distribution. And then, of course, when I went to Prabhupada's room, that kind of spoiled it, because along the wall was a twisted version of the last year of Prabhupada's life, where they completely misunderstood Prabhupada's, handing over of the managerial and guru responsibilities to his disciples. They completely twisted that. But the irony is that people who say, and I talked to my Bangalore, because I was giving the founder Acharya seminar in, let's say, first it was Bangalore Central Temple and then Bangalore South. And they were all graduates, so to speak, of Madhu Pandit's Sangha there at Hare Krishna Hill. And then once they realized that, ISKCON wasn't, the force for evil that they had been led to believe, once they had sort of escaped from the bubble of Hare Krishna Hill, they told me that the irony of Madhu Pandit's preaching is that, people, they're reading in Prabhupada's books that you have to approach a spiritual master, and you have to take shelter of him, and you have to take initiation. So they naturally come to him. And he's saying, I'm not, you're Prabhupada's disciple. So it's a twisting. It's a twisting. We're all Prabhupada anugas, but Prabhupada made it very clear in his Vani that along with making him our foundational relationship and core identity, we need people manifest before us, as Prabhupada said, who can pull, the guru can pull your ear. He can correct you. So you need both. And to simply reduce the guru to a Ritvik, a ceremonial functionary, somebody who's not really important, it's a real disservice to Srila Prabhupada and his movement. Now that said, because of the invitation of Prabhupada in the 1980s, that kind of created Ritvikism, that invitation of Prabhupada, that abuse of power and authority created that backlash of Ritvikism. But now that ISKCON is recovering from that, and we're becoming more founder Acharya centered, there is a hope that at least maybe in the future, maybe we'll have to wait till Madhu Pandit Prabhu passes, but that all those assets that he's been empowered. He's an empowered person to create temples and attract people and books. He has a lot of resources. But maybe that will all someday, come under ISKCON's official shelter too. So there won't be this artificial separation of his assets and ISKCON's. So you need both. You need the founder Acharya as the center, and you need all the different kinds of gurus to enrich, enhance, and deepen our relationship with Srila Prabhupada. I always say, okay, so look, yeah, Prabhupada initiated me on Saturday, July 17th, 1971 in Detroit, Michigan. We had driven up from New Vrindavan to Detroit, where Prabhupada that was the closest he was passing to us. And so now here it is, 2022. So I'm in my 52nd year as Prabhupada's initiated disciple, but that's not my core identity as Prabhupada's Diksha disciple. That's not who I am. I'm his Shiksha follower. That's what makes me a Prabhupada Nuga. There are plenty of people who took initiation from Prabhupada who gave up following his teachings. So we all have that same shared common core identity as Prabhupada Nugas if we follow his instructions. He lives forever by his divine instructions, and the follower lives with him. Okay, good question. And now it's past time. And I'm going to have to make one exception to the 8:30 rule, or it's, what time is it? Or 9 o'clock rule where you are, by answering Prabhu's one more question, huh? Is that okay, Prabhu, Mukunda?
Thank you so much, Prabhu. Thank you. Hare Krishna.
Hi.
Hare Krishna. Thank you.
Was there one more, right? I saw one more hand.
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji. Dandavat pranam.
Hi. Dandavat
Thank you.
pranam.
Thank you, Prabhuji, for the session. Prabhuji, you mentioned that my question is somewhat similar to the previous question. Not exactly similar, but in line with the previous question. So you said that one can become a guru by strictly following the disciplic succession. So
That's Prabhupada's words.
Yeah. So
Strictly following.
what do we mean by strictly following or just following the disciplic succession? And number two is, are we talking about Diksha Guru or Shiksha Guru here?
Well, there's no difference, is there? I mean, in ISKCON, we think there is.
Yes.
It really isn't. Have you ever heard Bhanu Swami's seminars on this? Diksha, Shiksha, it's mind-blowing. He shows from Guru Sadhu Shastra that, as Prabhupada said, they're equal and identical manifestations of Krishna. Well, strictly following, it's just like anything. You know, if you go to Prabhupada's Vani, you can find very kind of liberal definitions of things, and you can find very strict definitions of things. Right? So let's see, let's go to a hot button issue. You can find a liberal definition of illicit sex, and you can find a strict definition. So the liberal definition, you'll hear Prabhupada say this sometimes, is especially when he's being questioned, you know, by reporters, from people from the outside of his Sangha. Because sometimes, you know, they don't like, well, they don't like our regulative principles. They think it's too repressive, and yeah. So they say, why are you against sex, Swamiji? They used to say that. Why are you against sex? Prabhupada said, we're not against sex. Krishna says, kamosmi, dharma viruddha bhuteshu, kamosmi. I am sex life, which is not contrary to religious principles. So Prabhupada, he'll liberally say often, if you want to, if it's too much to completely deny it, stop it, then we say you get yourself married, you limit your sexual engagement, you know, to one person. But we don't say stop sex. Now, if you go further, then you'll find in Prabhupada's Vani that, strictly speaking, as Prabhupada's, you know, Guru Nasasya, Pita Nasasya, the 5th canto verse, where Lord Rishabdev says you shouldn't become a father, a mother, a spiritual master, or a worshipable demigod unless you can, you know, deliver your dependents from the path of repeated birth and death. So in his comments to that verse, oral comments, this is not in the purport, but he was speaking on this verse, and he was saying, so if you're married, but you think you cannot, in good conscience, be confident that you can deliver whatever children you produce, then there's no need. You don't have to, if that's not what you, if being parents of children is not really what you want to do, maybe like some people, they don't have children, so they don't end up being parents of so many, you know, as a husband and a wife, and they're kind of Shiksha gurus or Diksha gurus, like Bhaktivinoda Thakur, he was guru and his wife Bhagavati Devi, he was great soul too. So so Prabhupada said, this is spiritual contraceptive method. And he kind of chuckled when he said it, that we don't resort to the materialists' contraceptive methods, all this device and that device, but we just refrain, and we get our higher taste and deepen love, intimate love, through helping others. So that's just one example, sexuality. But you do find strict and liberal definitions of practically everything, every sphere of human activity in Prabhupada's Vani. So I think that's all I can say on that right now. But I really do have to go. But Giriraj Prabhu, next time we're going to look at a special kind of spiritual master. Today's lesson was the spiritual masters, kind of a thumbnail or cursory guided tour. Prabhupada gives us of Guru Tattva through his purports, and also some verses in the first foundational chapter of CC. Now, in the next lesson, we're going to look at a special kind of spiritual master, a founder Acharya, how that concept evolved in the Gaudiya Vaishnava Sampradaya over time, right from the time of Mahaprabhu all the way till the 20th century, when that phrase, that English Sanskrit compound phrase, was first uttered. Founder, English, Acharya, Sanskrit. It's very interesting. It's a history lesson, but not dry history. It's full of juice. Okay, and you suggest next time, Giriraj Prabhu, that I do send the script beforehand, so maybe the Prabhus can look it over and study it. And while I'm speaking, you'll notice I do digress from the script. Sometimes I stray off the script just to fill in, give some color from Prabhupada's own pastimes. Okay, thank you very much, Prabhus.
Hare Krishna. Thank you so much, Prabhuji, to give us some insight into, I would say, basics of Guru Tattva, and also difference about Diksha Guru and Shiksha Guru. This question remains, still in devotee's mind, and
Yes.
like you said, we remain a very Diksha-centric organization rather than Shiksha. So maybe we will, like Prabhuji said, so we'll share today's script. I'll share it in the groups with all of you, and the next script also. Then after 2 days' time, once you have digested that, then I will share that one also. So then before the next seminar, you can hear it, read it, and then maybe have more questions from that, and can understand that flow, what Prabhuji is trying to say. So thank you, Prabhuji. We are very grateful to you for giving us this time. So all of us, we heartily chant Hare Krishna Mahamantra to thank Prabhu. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna,
Krishna 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 Hare Hare,
Hare
Hare
Ram,
Ram,
Hare Ram, Hare
Ram,
Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare.
Krishna Prabhu ki jai, Jagat Guru
Jai.
Prabhupada ki jai.
Jai. I'll see you in February.
Yes, Prabhu. See you next one.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Thank you, Prabhu.
Hare
Thank
Krishna,
you.
Prabhu. Thank you. Thank you, Prabhu.
Oh.
thank you, Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji. That